Important notice: the following content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. All discussions are based on personal opinions and experiences. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out to a local support organization. Important.
Welcome to Through the Eyes of Survivors. This is a podcast where we uplift voices that have lived through the storm and now lead others to shelter. And I am your host, Tara Woodlee. And today we're peeling back layers of healing and resilience and reclaiming our voice after domestic violence. In this episode, Letters to My Younger Self, How I Took Back My Story After Domestic Violence. Believe me, you don't want to miss this episode. This is one that will leave a mark on your heart in the best possible way. So today's guest is BB Gabriel, a Canadian author, registered social worker, and survivor of both sexual and domestic violence type of assault. And her book is called No Ordinary Love. It is a fictionalized memoir that threads together the stories of three survivors. Each woman's journey is different, yet an emotional core remains the same: surviving, processing, and rewriting your story on your own terms. And BB just didn't survive her past. She studied it, she dissected it, and she turned it into a roadmap for others. So, with a BA in, oh my goodness, I may not pronounce this right. Go ahead.
Apologies.
Thank you. And a BSW and a clinical MSW under her belt, plus a minor in women's studies. She now is using every tool in her toolbox to help others heal through education and empathy and the power of storytelling. But before we get in, we have to do a quick shout out to our affiliate, Opus Clips. Opus Clips is a great platform that helps you turn long form interviews like this one through the power of AI into viral clips that keep your message moving. So if you want to amplify your voice too, like we have, check them out. The link will be in the comment sections below. And every time if you sign up for Opus Clips using our link, you help domestic violence victims heal with the funding that Opus Clips provides to us. So today's guest is someone whose story is very impactful in her mission. So BB Gabriel, we're so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful. So for those who may not know your story, would you like to start by walking us through the path that led you to surviving abuse and becoming a clinical social worker and author?
Mm-hmm. So it started for me, it was like I hate saying teen dating because I was a teen, but my abuser was a full grown adult male.
Mm-hmm.
I was 17 years old and was just struggling to feel connected and loved and seen and heard, as a lot of teenagers struggle with. And along came what appeared to be a Prince Charming who saw me, heard me, validated me, loved me. And I just thought that it was meant to be. And I left home and I moved in with this person. And fairly quickly, I guess, things started to turn. And then it was it depends on where you start counting, but a 2-year kind of nightmare it didn't really end, because then he stalked me after that while I was in my 20s, and I mean, really still into my 30s. And so it took a long time to be physically free from him. And once I was, it took me even longer. I mean, still to this day, there are triggers that a more healed version of myself works through. But yeah, it's been a decades long experience. And once I got into university, I started writing about my story. Before university, I wanted to go into fashion, merchandising, and management. And this experience really made me realize that I wanted to go into a helping profession. And so I started out in psychology, still took a lot of psychology, but found social work by fluke, and realized that that's kind of what I always thought psychology was, like clinical social work. And so it was just a better fit for me. And that's where I started my healing journey, really, for myself before I was able to speak about it to anybody else or share it with anybody else.
Yes, absolutely. And please, anybody watching, we encourage you to comment, yeah, and join us in the conversation. And if you have any questions, we can address those from the comments as we're talking. So please feel free to give your opinions or ask your questions through the process of the podcast. So um yeah, so um your book. So tell me a little bit more about No Ordinary Love.
Yeah, so I can just show you a picture because I think it really relates well to your podcast name. Oops, I'm there.
There you go.
Because I was silenced for so long. And so, actually, in the back, if you can see the writing, faint writing, that's
Yes.
actually a letter. So he used to write me letters. And so part of how it started for me writing was it was almost like a devil on one side and angel on the other shoulder situation, where he was writing me these letters from jail. Eventually he went to jail, and but before and after, and I started writing to myself to kind of balance that. um,
Right.
but yeah, my book, so I started, I forget your actual question, sorry.
I was just asking you to tell me a little bit about
A
it. So
little
your
bit about it,
background
yeah.
was that he was writing you letters. So I
Mhm.
imagine, like with most of us, because you know, most of the time you get a love letter, but then
Mhm.
there comes the apology letter or the other, where they try to gaslight you into thinking things didn't happen that happened, and
Mhm.
so it's a very interesting dynamic of what you're bringing to the table with this, because I don't think I've ever thought of it in that manner before, because I'm sure a lot of other people have experienced that. So just kind of tell me, you have that background. So what's the journey and what led you to write the letters to yourself to help balance it and then put it in the book form, I guess?
Yeah. So I was trying to. So when I first went to university, I was learning about all of the people, the women specifically, especially then women out there who were
Okay.
experiencing this. And there was no acknowledgement ever about those of us in here. And so it really felt to me like I had to make a choice. I had to either be a helper or I had to be a survivor. Like there was no conversation around, most likely 1 in 3 of us in this very room have been through something like this. There was none of that. And so it was kind of almost like an imposter syndrome. And I hadn't yet dealt with it myself yet. And I was still in denial. I was still had a lot of internalized, misplaced shame. And I hadn't made sense of it yet, much less talked to anybody else about it. And so what ended up happening was with my degrees, oftentimes we have to, dissect a case study and assess it and then make a treatment plan, or we have a standardized client. And so I thought, well, why am I using all of these made up examples that are being provided? I have a story,
Right.
right? And so I wasn't ready yet to share that it was me I was talking about, but I just made up my own case study. So I externalized that part of myself and I called her Katie. And I wrote about the awful things that happened to Katie. And eventually, as I was writing, I realized how therapeutic it was for me. I think, first of all, calling her a different name than my name was
Mhm.
helpful, because it was like I was reading about somebody else. And so I was able to really tune into that compassion and obviously empathy, but compassion, and there was no shame or blame that I was projecting onto this other person that wasn't myself, right? Um,
Mhm.
and just with the writing and rewriting and then eventually reading out loud, that was a next step. It was like a bit of exposure therapy, really. I was kind of reliving what I had been through, but in a safe, controlled environment where it was very intentional by me. And I eventually I started sharing that it was about me, but I mean that was a long time out. We're talking like 10 years later.
Oh,
And in
wow.
yeah. And in fact, when I finally finished the book, because this took me a long time, depending on when you start counting, I had reached out to my one of my university professors who had taught us a couple of different domestic violence classes in my undergrad. And I said, hey, you probably don't remember me, but she's like, of course I do. And I said, well, I wrote this book, and you were actually the first person that I ever disclosed to without you knowing it. Because I didn't say to her, hi, I've gone through this. I just wrote about this character. And so I asked her if she would be willing to read my book and consider writing a foreword for it. And so she did. So it kind of came full circle all these years later. But that is how it started.
Wow, that's pretty powerful to be able to go back, and I'm sure that shed some light for your professor, teacher, whatever. They For them to know that, to find out that the work you were actually doing was actually your story and provided some kind of light. I'm just interested on how she felt about that afterward.
Yeah, so it was interesting because she remembered me and she remembered a group of, friends that I hung out with. And she did remember, so I worked on two undergraduate degrees at the same time. So I was doing that for 5 years. So I was there for a long time. And she did remember in the later, like maybe my last year, that I had a friend and I had shared that like we too had been victims of domestic violence, and that she had us read a book. It's up here somewhere. But anyway, she had us read a book, and we are like, yeah, us too. It's us in the classroom as well. And she did remember that, but she did not know that all of the papers that I wrote for her, like I have some here, for example, she did not know that all of these, oh, I keep doing that.
Yeah, it's
All
okay.
papers that I was writing for her were about me. And so that part
Right.
was the aha. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I imagine that was quite shocking. So, I mean, that's a good takeaway, especially anybody who's in the educational field, to realize that sometimes that's maybe what you're experiencing with students.
Yeah. Well, actually, I did a speaking engagement with a master's level university class out of Ontario, and that's one of the things that I was saying was, in the moment, nobody, and this was many years ago, of course. I hope it's different now, but nobody in the moment was saying, probably a minimum of 1 in 3 of you in this room have experienced this. Nobody was saying that, so it felt like I was alone and I couldn't share, and I was imposter syndrome, had to be quiet. But in addition to that, in me trying to essentially therapize myself, I was re-traumatizing myself in the beginning. I didn't have the appropriate support systems. I didn't have a counselor. I didn't have a therapist. I wasn't telling my friends. My family didn't know until they knew that I was in a bad relationship. They knew that he was 14 years my senior when I was a teenager.
Right.
They knew he was bad news. And I had said along over the years, I eventually used the word abusive, but nobody asked me like what that meant. And so
Mhm.
it wasn't until my book was done, my mom was the first person that I invited to read it with me out loud. She flew I live on the opposite side of the country from her, and she flew out, and I rented us an Airbnb for a long weekend, and we took turns reading my book out loud. And that was the first time that she, and then eventually my other family members, knew anything about it.
Wow. How did it feel to have your mother experience that with you?
Well, it was interesting actually. I mean, on one hand, it was good. She was sharing a lot about, her upbringing and her past and some of her own traumas, not domestic violence specifically, but some child abuse stuff, and from an external family member, not her mom or dad. But so, I mean, that was interesting and helpful. And we for lack of a better word, bonded over that. But on the other hand, she actually kept apologizing to me because she said, the way that you've written this book, and it was very intentional that I did this, the way that you've written this book, I keep forgetting that I'm reading about my daughter, like you. Like, yes, there are obviously throughout I can see you and see me and see your sisters and see whatever, but the way that you've gone about it, it's hard because I wrote it like a fiction. And
Right.
so it's very easy, and that's the feedback I get all the time, is it reads very easily and it's interesting, and it's kind of like a domestic thriller in a sense, but it is my real life. And so she kept kind of forgetting that and having to come back to, oh no, like this happened to you, you know.
Mhm. Wow. I imagine that was a very eye-opening moment for your mom. Um, so you started writing these letters and you're turning it basically into a therapeutic tool, right? So you're writing your story so and later you're responding
Yeah.
with letters to your younger self. What was the moment that made you realize your writing is the path to healing?
Yeah, I mean, I the very first thing I ever wrote was in a high school class, because I was in high school when I met this person, and I knew right then that this was something that was extremely helpful. The writing back didn't happen right away. What happened was, initially I wrote every single domestic violence scene, I call them, that Katie, as I called her, experienced. So they
Mhm.
were shorter scenes of everything that had happened to me. And when I say everything, I more mean like the big events, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, the really intense psychological abuse. I wrote them all in small scenes. And I did that within a few years of being physically free of him. The writing back didn't come until a lot later. Like, that was more when I decided, you know what, I'm going to put all of this into a book. The book wasn't the plan right off the bat. I was just trying to therapize myself through university and get a good grade, you know? Um,
Right.
so it's when I decided to turn it into a book that I thought, well, what if, and this is not a spoiler alert, folks, I did not end up doing this, but how I first started writing the book was that I had Katie writing these scenes, and then I had it like a therapist was responding to her, but really you would find out at the end that the therapist was an older version of her. And so you'd see a scene, and then you would see the proper way that you would hope somebody would respond to that, because I wanted to be the mother or the therapist or the, you know, healed person for my inner child. That's essentially what I was trying to get out.
Right.
um and so that came later. So I did that, and then my editor was like, no, this doesn't work, I don't like this, you're not doing it. And I mean, I found a different way to go about it, but
Mhm.
it came away from that. But I have now, like, for every single scene that's in my book, I have a response that I wrote to that little me, that was exactly who I needed at that time that I didn't have, that was exactly, like I said, exactly what I needed to hear at that time that I didn't hear, and showed the compassion and the support and the just wow. And so that part was like, there are different stages of healing, of course, and that came later, but it was so healing in itself.
Mhm. Yes, and I can relate in some ways. I know that here in the organization, like, we hold yearly retreats, and that part of one of the exercises we have attendees do is actually to write a letter to their abuser,
Mm,
right? And get out everything you felt about that. And I have seen the transformations just doing that can
mhm,
happen. And even for myself, there for quite some time, every retreat, I was writing a new letter to not only my abuser, but, certain things that happened with certain family members over time. Every person that had brought some kind of trauma into my life, I was using that experience to do it. But I never thought of the concept of writing to my younger self. So that um, is an amazing dynamic that you thought up of. Just or writing a letter to myself, let alone my younger self. Of you know, you weren't responsible for this. You are held responsible for this. This is you're worth this. I can imagine that would be um could be very cathartic.
Mhm.
Yeah, but also open some doors. Absolutely. So what kind of doors did it open at first that you experienced in starting that kind of a journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it helped me to be able to get it all out and write a book. I mean, that was not easy. I was jumping over time. I was trying to live a life. I was, working. I was raising a family. I was doing all these things, and so I had to pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. And as you can imagine, just writing about this and thinking about sharing it publicly one day was very daunting. And so being able to console or comfort or speak to that younger part of me that was still scared and still felt misplaced shame and was still maybe in denial and whatever was what really helped me to keep going and to keep pushing forward. Because even though I knew this is tricky to explain, but like even though obviously I knew I was writing to a younger me, like so I'm a school counselor. That is what I do
Mhm.
day in, day out. And so the further I got away from Katie, the more that it became like a student of mine or a client of mine or a daughter of mine, or do you know what I mean? And so it became more and more important to me the older I got, but the more healed I got, to share her story, because she was suffering in silence still.
Right.
And yeah, so it just helped me to keep moving on. I can't tell you how many times I almost gave up, or I put it away and I didn't pick it up for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it was, because this process, the very first thing I ever wrote was within a month of me being first physically free of him. He came back, but so I was 19 and a half. And then the last thing, like, it was published in January that just passed. So
Mhm.
it took that long, and I'm 43 now, to be clear. So 19 and a half to 43.
Right. It's a
Yeah,
journey. It's
it's a
definitely a journey. And when you're a high functioning person usually that has experienced the kind of traumas that we do, it's I think sometimes harder to separate yourself and to be able to write, especially write it down and let it go, because I tend to write some too, and it's harder to put that down to express yourself even if writing is easy,
Mhm.
because you have to be willing to, for me at least, I'm speaking for me, um, kind of open back up that wound a little bit and then rebandage it again and move on and try to heal it. And sometimes that can be it can be exhausting, but when you finish it, it's worth it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
If anybody's thinking about doing something similar into that kind of experience. So, um, absolutely. So, let's see. So, um, we know like storytelling, right, can help uh, restructure those kinds of responses because speakers, a lot of us tell our stories.
Mhm.
We want somebody to believe us. We want to tell them our story. And just being able to do that restructures the trauma and the memories for us. Um, but what would you say as far as like being able to write it down? What kind of differences is that? Or is there any?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's freeing. It's like, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this, but oftentimes a strategy that I will tell to whoever, myself, clients, friends, if you can't fall to sleep because your mind keeps going, like, just keep a pad of paper and a pen beside your bed and just write it out. Like, it just needs to get out. And then you can kind of leave it, you can kind of shelf it, you can come back to it later. You know, you're not going to forget it because it's there. That was
Mhm.
my experience with writing about my domestic violence experiences. Like, getting it out was the first step, and then it felt like, okay, like, it's there, it can't be taken away from me. And that's part of it. Was when you're I'll speak for myself. When I was in this situation, it was behind closed doors. Nobody else saw what was going on, and the man who was doing these things to me was gaslighting me and making me think I was crazy and denying that he'd done anything. I mean, one of the things he did was he denied that we had a cat. And he went on and on and on for hours saying that I was crazy. He was going to commit me to the loony bin because we didn't have a cat. And he said, well, you go and show me a picture. Well, this was at a time, this was years ago. We didn't have cameras on our phones, right? I didn't have a camera with film in it and whatever. And he said, you tell me if anybody knows we have a cat. Well, of course, nobody knew we had a cat because I didn't know anybody anymore because he'd isolated me away from every single person I knew and eventually moved me to the opposite side of our country, of my country. I'm in Canada. And so part of the writing it down was just keeping it safe. Like, there it is. Nobody can take it away. There, it was like proof, which is so bizarre, but
Right.
that's what it felt like. And same with his letters. I actually, one of the university students that I had just shared with you, I presented to, she asked me, she said, so you've kept all the letters and they're throughout the book. I had to
Mhm.
change them slightly because you can get in trouble for copyright.
Right. Mhm.
Anyway, slightly, but I kept all the letters. And she asked me, she said, why? Why did you keep them? And I said, proof, because he showed his true self in those letters. No, he never technically apologized. He didn't describe the things he had done to me, but you can tell the whole cycle of abuse is in every letter that he wrote me. It
Right.
starts with, the honeymoon stage, and then there's the warning, and then we're in the crisis, and then it's in every single letter. And that's how I also tried to structure my book too, was to show it like that. So the letters come in because he would use those initially as a way to, I guess, kind of apologize, but they weren't really apologies. And so I kept those. And so just the writing and getting it out on paper was like proof to me that it happened, and nobody could take that away from me. And I was worried that over time I would forget. And it's interesting because I had just held up a university paper from 2 decades ago. When
Right.
I first dug those out and found them and reread them, because I looked for them to send my university professor that I just told you, when I dug them out and reread them, I was so shocked at how right I got it, if that makes sense, which I know sounds wild because it happened to me, but we forget things over time. There are so many things I don't remember from yesterday, much less,
Right. Yes, absolutely.
right? Which was 20 years ago. And it was like almost verbatim. And I think a big part of that is because I took the time to write it down. I think
Mhm.
that that helped to like free me of it, but also keep track of it, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, this is a good place for us to just take a quick break. And we'll be back in a little bit with more from BB. So, stay tuned. We're just going to talk for a minute here about it's our volunteerism here at Break the Silence. So it takes a village to support survivors. And that village is made up of incredible volunteers here at Break the Silence, from this podcast to our social media, survivor support, outreach team, everything. It's definitely a network of survivors helping survivors, by people who care. So if you ever thought of the fact, I wish I could do more, this is your sign, right? Whether you give an hour a week or, um, you know, if you have more time than that, we have a place for you. So we're going to play a quick clip on volunteerism and we will be right back. All right, so we are back. If you would like to volunteer with us, there will be links in the comments and in the description, or you can head over to btsadv.org/volunteer and sign up, learn more. Definitely join the movement. Your time and your voice and your skills, they really matter. We need, and all of it's remote. So definitely contact us. And let's get back to talking to BB here and um, BB Gabriel. So we love to have her, and we were talking about her book and her journey um, on different things with her writing letters and letters to her younger self, and um, how that has helped her in her journey. So um, now, I think in part of your book here that they, from what I understand, there's a lot about sensory triggers. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. Um, sensory triggers can happen after you have physically left your abuser. And what helped you to break free from those kind of an emotional bond or chain?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I won't lie, it took a long time. It was a lot of trial and error. I was diagnosed with panic disorder and generalized anxiety disorder pretty quickly, but it was post traumatic stress disorder. If they knew my story, I hadn't shared with anybody. I was just kind of having panic attacks all the time, being hospitalized. Nobody knew what was going on with me. And they thought that it was the stress from my schooling, which, I mean, I guess it was, but it was probably just because I was, re-traumatizing myself, and these triggers would happen. And so they're all five senses. There would be the sight of the similar car or the same car that he had that would just take me right back in time. Triggers are all about taking you into the past. You're not in the present moment anymore. Or
Right.
hearing his name, like, for many reasons, for many obvious reasons, I did not give him his real name in the book, but I also didn't name him at all because I wanted it to be able to be anybody's abuser, anybody's tormentor. But hearing his name still will chill me. Smelling certain smells, feeling certain feels, like, I mean, you name it. And it's gotten better over time. A big part of that was still writing it down, was to be
Mm-hmm.
it by writing it, but also was doing some, and I didn't have these words at the time, but essentially exposure therapy, being able to have a planned, intentional, gradual time when you would slowly reintroduce those things to yourself and be able to use self talk to say, no, I'm in the here and now. I'm in the present moment. That feeling that I'm feeling, that trigger, that pull to the past, I don't need to go there. I'm here in the moment and I'm fine and I'm safe now. And just slowly kind of triggering yourself a little bit on purpose, to be honest. Like that, there was a lot of that. But even all these years later, like, it's been over 2 decades. I mean, it depends on when you start counting. I'm talking about since I was first physically free of him. I'm not including the stalking that he did for a decade and a half after. But even recently, like, actually finishing up my book was quite triggering. I was feeling a lot more triggered than I had been in many years because I was writing about it, I was talking about it, I was rereading it. And there were many things that have happened over the last 3-ish years, I would say, that have, it feels like sometimes I'm taking a step backwards, and I'm not. I had to remind myself, no, this is because you're talking about it. This is because you're writing about it. I'm essentially reliving it. And so
Right.
just about reminding myself that I'm in the here and now. I am not that girl anymore. I am not in that place anymore. He is not around me anymore. I am safe. I am, healed, more healed, a more healed version of myself. And just reminding myself of that. I, like, for one example, I have a friend who 2-ish years ago now, maybe not quite, she started dating this guy. I wrote about it in the book, so you'll see if you read it. She's
Right.
dating this guy, and the first time I saw him, I thought it was my abuser.
Oh.
So I have not seen my abuser in physically in the same room since I was 20, in my mid 20s. I haven't heard from him since I was 23, like a direct reach out where he found me. I haven't heard from him since I was 33, so 10 years now. Um, or maybe I was 34, but anyway. And so I didn't know what he actually looked like, but this man had the same eyes, and he was approximately the same height, and he was older, but he was this, I found out, the exact same age, like same birth year as my,
Right.
and it was a real, I don't think I'm supposed to swear, but like, mind, you know what? Because
Uh-huh.
my body was screaming, it's him. And it wasn't him. And I had to keep in public around a whole bunch of people, I had to keep telling myself internally, it is not him. It is not him. He has a different name. He's from a different country. He has a bit of an accent. It's not him. But my whole body, your body doesn't forget. And it was screaming that I was in danger.
Mhm.
So this is an example where this is a good friend of mine. I don't want to freak her out by saying, hey, your new boyfriend reminds me of my abusive ex. No one wants to hear that. I
That's
also
for sure. Yeah, they don't wanna hear that, do they?
no,
Oh.
and like I didn't want to not be around my friend group anymore. There's a bigger group of us that we hang out, and I thought, what am I going to do? Like I need to deal with this. I cannot avoid this. I have to deal with this if I want to keep this friend group. And so and again, this wasn't within the last couple of years. Okay. So this
Mhm.
is how long it can last. I had to be kind to myself. I chose one of like my closest friend in that group, my best friend in that group. I chose to tell her. I told her how terrifying it was for me. I told her that I knew it wasn't him, but my body thought it was him and was playing tricks on me and trying to convince me. I told her what I needed in those moments. I asked her to keep an eye out for me, to pull me for a break. She smokes, I don't. So it's helpful if she's like, oh, do you want to come out with me? I'm going to have a cigarette. Yes, I do. I need a break. And I just got some help from her and my husband, actually. I told him about it too, so that if they were seeing that I was not managing well anymore, that they could help me to either take a break or end it for the night. It's time to go home. And I did distance myself a little bit, as in we weren't hanging out every single weekend together anymore, because I really
Mhm.
needed to like figure out my you know what. So these triggers, yes, they've gotten a lot better over time. Like there are certain things, if I were to see that same car, I don't think that would impact me. I hear the name all the time. It's not a unique name.
Mhm.
Or the smell of orange, because he had kind of suffocated me with a whole thing of Kool-Aid over my head, so that the smell or the taste of orange bothered me for a long time. That doesn't bother me anymore. But there are other things, and sometimes new things, like this example where it was a person,
Yeah,
or even like actually 2 weeks ago. And again, I don't think that this would have happened if I wasn't talking about my book all the time now, but
right.
my husband and I went out to a show, and I just kind of had looked behind me to see somebody that was coming down to the stage from behind us. And I swore that the guy sitting directly behind my husband was my ex. And I couldn't focus for the rest of the show. I was like, he's just waiting. He's just waiting to address me. And
Mm.
and part of that is I'm worried that he's going to find out about this book. I think he might be dead, but if he's not, that he's going to find out about this book and hunt me down again, right?
Yes,
He
yeah.
stalked me for a decade and a half. And so it's really, again, about, in that moment, it was like, it is not him. You do not need to turn around to see. It is not him. You are safe. You're in the here and now. You're in an amphitheater full of people. Your husband's right beside you, and just talking yourself through it.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. And for any of those listening, if you wanna share with us any sensory type triggers you've had along the way, please put that into the comment section. But I understand even how a name, I mean, for me, every time, you know, for me, with what happened to my daughter and her death from domestic violence, both of the young men involved were named Josh.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I see somebody named Josh, I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like, because really, and then because I have seen over the years, and it's been years of like, I'll see stories again, somebody named Joshua, Josh, and it just triggers me right back into why do all of them have to be Joshua, And I'm like, but it's not every man named Joshua, you know, and I have some of that with my ex as well, some stuff that triggers. Different smells and different things, ways certain wa s certain ways that certain men do their hair even
Mm-hmm.
that remind me of him, and it's you definitely have to ground yourself into, you are not in that space again. You are not, but your mind and your body tells you you are, so I completely understand that. Miss Audrey, said self declarations are so powerful for our healing. Absolutely. So, did you do a little bit of that? I mean, as far as like in the book, because you said you were telling your younger self what you needed at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, so I did that part isn't in the book. I structured it a bit differently, but it all comes together at the end.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've done that for myself. I did that as part of the initial structure of the book. I've done it since then. Like every time I've done a speaking engagement or a podcast or I'm talking about my book, I haven't done a book signing yet because I'm terrified to have to talk about this in person with somebody.
Right.
I don't know why. I have some lined up, but I put them in the future so I can get more used to it first. But every time there's a little bit of that, right? And
Hmm.
it's really interesting. I would have to say I've done a lot of things in my life, and I'm pretty. I've had a lot of experiences. I'm well traveled. I'm educated. I'm really blessed. But there is a lot of self doubt that I still had, and a lot of, like I've already shared, this imposter syndrome, and really
Right.
not feeling like I am who I say I am, or my job says I am, or my degree say I am, or now my book says I am. And so this process of, like, since my book came out and having to do this self promotion, if you will, which is so the opposite of who I am, has really taught me that I can do hard things. Like, I know I can do hard things when it comes to, obviously, I survived and I'm thriving after domestic violence. So I know those kind of hard things. But this part, like talking about it live, I think this is the first podcast I've done maybe that's live, or
Right.
or talking to, like, kind of my peers, if you will, like that university graduate level university class that I talked to, like those are my peers, kind of like they're in the same or they're going into the same profession as me, and they had a lot of questions, and so I can do hard things in that sense. And so I've kind of been getting to know, I don't know, a part of me that I hadn't met before, and it all came out of not just the writing, but now the sharing and the talking about it.
Yeah. Was there ever a point that you just wanted to stop?
Oh yeah, like all the time. All the time, like last week even.
Right. What kept you going?
Well, I always say that a big part of it is like a gambling mentality. Like, you've put this much in, and it would be a waste if you don't finish it. But also that I believe I owe it to that little part of me. She needs her voice to be heard, her story to be heard, and I'm the only person who can do that for her, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I also say, if I had known then what I know now, as far as how long it would take, how hard it would be, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm kind of glad I didn't know that. But I got to a point where it was like, no, it's now or never. And where that came for me, I don't think I've actually shared this with you, Tara, but
Yeah.
um, my youngest sister was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Um, and I always wanted to write my story for my family because, as I shared at the very beginning of this, I never told them. They knew he was bad news. They knew he was an ephebophile. They knew that means he likes younger people, but not pedophile, which are really young, like teens.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So my husband was what I would call my ex-husband, was what I would always call the barely legal. He
yeah,
always hit him just after 18,
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't even 18, and the girl after me was actually only 15 when he
Oh,
impregnated.
wow. Yeah.
He was 38. But yes, that type. Now I forgot what I was saying. Sorry, what were we saying?
Oh, I'm sorry. I
No, that's
interrupted.
okay. No, it was me. No, oh well, it's fine. It'll come back.
Yeah.
It'll come back.
Because you were saying you were just thinking about it this week or something with
Oh, how
him.
many times I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots. But I wanted to get it out there first for my family, and I thought I had time. And my dad turns 83 this year, so like reverse back about 4 years. I knew that he was getting older, but we never we never really think about that. And the reality of it is none of us know how much time any of us have. And so when my sister was diagnosed with terminal cancer and like stage 4 right off the bat, you will not survive this. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to get this done now. And so that is really what got my butt in the chair every single day to be working on it every single day. It was my sister's impending death. And unfortunately, I did not get it done in time for her, but I do believe that she has absorbed it from wherever she is now and has helped me to carry me through, honestly, to get the rest of it done. But that was when I was like, no, this needs to get out, and there's not going to be anybody else. Nobody else is going to die. I'm going to get this out. And so that once that happened, I didn't look back. I just kept plugging along, even though weekly I wanted to stop.
Right. You now are offering all these insights and definitely like compassion and gratitude to your younger self. What message do you hope survivors like take away
Mm-hmm.
from that kind of a deep self-reflection and reprocessing their trauma?
I think it's really just about, even when you're sharing things with people, and even the people who have the best of intentions, and even the people who are the most educated on these matters and supporting people through them, there's nobody better to there's nobody better than yourself.
Mhm.
You need to be who you needed, not only then, but who you need now. We know what we need, we know what we want, we know what we need to hear, and it's really about, it's the deepest form of self-care, is really loving and mothering and supporting your own inner child. And actually, Mother's Day that just passed, I made a social media post about that. You see all these different things about different types of moms, like stepmoms that don't have their stepkids anymore, moms who have lost babies. I lost 2 pregnancies with this person, and because of his behavior, because of what he did to me, for sure. I wasn't able to have children after that, thanks to him. And so it was really about acknowledging all those moms, which lots of people do. But I did it one step further to say, Happy Mother's Day to those of us who are the best moms to our inner child. And I always encourage people to talk to your inner child, and ideally write to her or him if you're male or non-binary, but get a picture. Get a picture. Like, I have one right here to show, because I knew I was going to say this.
Mhm.
Get a picture of little you.
There you
Find
go.
one where you are just, when you look at her and you're like, you are so innocent and you don't care what anyone else thinks. And like, I don't know if you saw what I was wearing in that picture, but it's a whole lot of who knows what.
Oh, mine would go even older. So,
Well,
yeah.
you can go younger, you can go older, but get a picture of younger you, and have that visual either physically in your hands or in your mind whenever you are doubting yourself, whenever you are beating yourself up, whenever you think you can't do hard things. Remember her, because we're so hard on ourselves. But if we could, you know, think back. You know what I mean? Think back to who we were then. Like, even me now, I was 17, 18, 19, 20 when I was with this person. And even me now, when I think about the 17-year-olds that I work with in the private school I work for, like, that's young. That's
Right.
young. It didn't feel young to me in the moment. I felt like I was all grown up. I knew everything. I knew better than my parents and whatever, but
Mhm.
that's young. And so we really have to kind of like tune into that younger version of ourselves, and just, mother our own inner child.
Absolutely. Yes. So, well, I don't see any more comments, so I'm just going to ask some more questions. So, like, if somebody wanted to start a journey of writing letters to themselves, what would you recommend on how they would get started?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think when I've used this in my practice over the years with clients, it's usually around a specific thing. So it's not been specifically around domestic violence for that. So I guess it just depends.
Mhm.
As I said, for me, I wrote out the scenes, as I call them, first, and then responded to those. But it could be about anything. It could be in regards to self-esteem. It could be in regards to self-doubt. It can be whatever. So it's kind of hard for me to answer the question without having an idea of what, but I would pick an age that you want to speak to. Like in my book, I touch on three different parts of myself. And so there's the really young part, there's the kind of middle, like mid 20s part, and then there's a 30s part. And now, as I've already shared, I'm in my 40s part. And so really just honing in on what part are you speaking to, because the struggles that we have in our lives, they're coming from, not the struggles, but like it's coming from a younger place. So if we can try to tune into where that kind of started, then we can speak to that version of ourselves or that part of ourselves.
Of course. Yeah, I get what you're saying because like I can lay out my life at certain time periods, that there was, a certain incident at the age of 6 that was very traumatic and game changing for me. And then there's another one, at 11 when, my dad left, and then I found out he wasn't even my real biological dad and I never knew. And those moments define, those are
Mhm.
the moments that don't leave you,
Mhm.
and you can define changes in yourself and who you became and who you wanted to be in that timeline. And so essentially what I'm hearing you say is, kind of find those moments and define and start there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I also or not read, sorry, wrote, it's in my book, it's the last part of the book. It's how it ends. I wrote a letter to my younger family. And when I shared it with my mom, and I told, like, the book with my mom that I told you, I actually started there. I was like, okay, let's read the last bit first, because it's a letter that I wrote to the younger you who didn't know what I was about to go through, who didn't know what our family was about to embark on. So it doesn't just have to be to your own self. It could be to your younger mom or to your younger sibling or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, let's see here. So I guess kind of like wrapping up this episode, is there like anything else you would like to let people know about your book, or like where they can get it?
Yeah, so that was part of the struggle of where I wanted to give up. It's available. It should be available just about anywhere. So Amazon is probably the easiest and the quickest, especially if you have Prime. But it's also available through the Barnes and Noble website and through, if you're in Canada, Indigo Chapters. It should be. I mean, I've only checked Canadian independent bookstores, but it shows up like it's on the system. They tend to charge more because, unfortunately, just like I do, they have to pay for shipping. That's
Right.
why with Amazon, it's so nice, even though we all want to boycott them, but it's nice because it just is the price that it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it should be available in all those places. It's also a bit available, sorry, in an audio version. So anybody, I think right now it's exclusive to Audible, and I think that also means Apple's, whatever they call their audio things. But
Right.
if you go to Amazon, it'll show the audio version as well. If anybody, I don't know where your viewers are from, but if anyone is in the UK, especially, I have a lot of promo codes for the UK Audible. Um, I've had lots for the US, but I've kind of given those out and I'm just kind of waiting to see. So some might become available. If you wanted to follow me on Instagram, that's kind of the best place to keep an eye on what I'm doing and what I'm having. And if I'm doing contests, I've done a bunch of different stuff. And that is just, well, it's the name of my book. So no period, ordinary period, love underscore BB period Gabriel. That's the Instagram handle. Because there might be other US codes that become available that would be for free. I'm just trying to ask that people leave a review. So even if it's just stars would be fine, but ideally even like a sentence or maybe even
Okay.
just a word.
Right.
So yeah. Oh, the title of the book is
Yeah.
No Ordinary Love. There's many. So No Ordinary Love. And then if you just put BB, then you'll find mine because it's a
Yes,
popular
BB
title.
Gabriel. Yes, definitely look that up. Absolutely. And so, yeah, and it's been great having you on and getting to know you. And definitely, everybody, check out that book. It will be in descriptions as well. Um, so we just want to thank BB for reminding us that survival isn't a straight line, right? Sometimes it can be a spiral, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's a cycle that we have to revisit and reframe and reclaim. So whether you're writing letters to yourself or just learning how to look in the mirror and show yourself some kindness,
Yeah.
this journey is your journey and you need to do it your way. If you're listening today and wondering where you can even start, you can start here. You are not alone. Never too far from being, you're never too far gone. You can begin your journey today. If
And
you are, yes, go ahead.
may I just say one thing? Sorry, I should have said this earlier. One thing that I've really learned is essential is we're really hard on ourselves for how far we think we haven't come, and that's not
Yes.
true. Domestic violence, the experience of it, like the how you get groomed into it, is very much like I compare it to the healing process. It does not happen on the first date. It's not on the first date that you get insulted or that your money gets taken or that you're hit. These things take time. It's gradual and it's usually so slow that we don't even notice it happening until it's too late.
Yes.
Healing is like that too. Healing is can be so small and so gradual that we don't even notice that it's happening, and then we're hard on ourselves that we're not more healed or that we're not over it or whatever else. But
Yes.
it is happening. It's just happening in such subtle small ways that it's hard to remember. So we really need to gift ourselves grace and patience and really just remember that we are on the healing journey, even on the days that it doesn't feel like it or on the days that we even take steps back.
Wow, wonderful. I'm so glad you jumped in there and, and
Sorry.
said that. So, absolutely. Yeah, you're never too far gone, and you can begin again, and your voice matters. So please be sure to check out the book No Ordinary Love on Amazon. And now, before we go, I do have some exciting news. If you haven't seen our new segments on Friday, they're only here in LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. The new segment is called Survivor to Survivor. Check them out. They come out in the afternoon to early evening. Uh, it's your chance to ask us anything about surviving or rebuilding after domestic violence, anything from red flags to reactive abuse, or even how to co parent with someone who's toxic. And watch for those segments. It's not a full episode, it's 5 minutes or less. Um, you get. Um, you get information from one survivor to another on any of those topics that you write into us, and definitely send your email to podcast at breakthesilencedv.org, and we can feature it on the upcoming episode, and we will keep you anonymous. So don't forget to follow us on social media: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. We have all of them. Look for survivor stories and updates on our advocacy work. And if this podcast moved you, please consider going to the website and donating, because your support helps keep this platform alive and our great programs that we have alive and help survivors where they need it most. I thank you for listening to Through the Eyes of Survivors. Until next time, keep breaking that cycle, even in your quietest of days, because you're worth it. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. My name is Tara Woodlee, and I am the president of Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, an organization that gives survivors and their families, and the families that have lost loved ones to domestic violence, access to a community that understands the journey that they're facing. We hope this episode impacts you, and hopefully you want to learn more about the topic. If it is helping you in some way, let us know in the comments below. We love your feedback. Also, make sure to click the subscribe button below and the bell right next to it so that you can get notified the next time an episode premieres. We hope you will see us in the next episode, and thank you.